Okay, so we'll start with the Mangalacharan. Om Ajnana Timrandasya, Jnananjana Shalakaya, Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah, Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale, Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam, Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yudapatakamulam, Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha, Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Stam Sajivam, Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vitamscha, He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati, Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste, तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय. Hare Krishna. So we are in chapter 10 now of the first canto. So previously we have seen the first two verses. In the first verse of chapter 10, Shaunaka Muni asked, after killing his enemies who desired to usurp his rightful inheritance, how did the greatest of all religious men, Maharaj Yudhishthira, assisted by his brothers, rule his subjects? Surely he could not freely enjoy his kingdom with unrestricted consciousness. So this was the inquiry of Shaunaka Muni to Sutta Goswami. And even that inquiry is based on the perspective of Krishna consciousness. So here, even Shaunaka Muni is asking how Maharaj Yudhishthira ruled over the kingdom in a Krishna conscious way. Then in the second verse, which we saw last week, Sutta Goswami replies, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the maintainer of the world, became pleased after re-establishing Maharaj Yudhishthira in his own kingdom and after restoring the Kuru dynasty, which had been exhausted by the bamboo fire of anger. So here, Sutta Goswami reaffirms that Lord Krishna himself was very pleased after installing Yudhishthira as the rightful king, after the misrule of the Kauravas, and after the war, even this family feud was over. So we saw this verse last week. So today's verse be the third verse of chapter 10. Nishamya bhishmoktamatachituktam pravritta vinyana viduta vibrama Shashasagam Indra Ivajitashraya Paridyupantam Vartitaha Nishamya Bhishmoktamatachituktam Pravritta Vinyana Viduta Vibrama Shashasagam Indra Ivajitashraya Paridyupantam Vartitaha Nishamya Bhishmoktamatachituktam Pravritta Vinyana Viduta Vibrama Shashashagamindra Ivajitashraya Paridyupantam Anujanuvartita. Any volunteers want to try? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Okay.
Nishamya Vishmoktam Atachu Toktam Pravarta Vishnana Viduta Vibramaha Shashasagam Indra Ivajitra Shrayaha Parityupantam Anujanu Vartitaha.
Okay, very good, Mataji. Next. Anyone else?
I'll read, bro.
Okay.
Nishamya bhukta matachutya takam pravarta vijnana viduta vibrama sashagamindra ivajirtraya parityayuktam anujanuvirtaha.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just one or two more. Yeah, come on. Anyone else? Okay, just one more person. Yeah. Okay.
Harisha Babu, I'll try.
Okay. Yeah.
Nisamya Bhishmoktam Achayuktokam Ma Pravarta Vishana Viduta Vibrama Sasasa Gam Indra Ivajatraya Pariyupatam Anujanuvartita.
Okay, not bad. Just note this Sasha here, it is Shashasha as apostrophe, and also this is the second line is Pravrita. Okay, so we'll proceed with the synonyms. Nishamya Bhishmoktam Achatu Yoktam Pravrita Vinyana Viduta Vibrama Shashasa Gamindra Ivajitashraya Paridyupanta Manujanu Valtita. Nishamya, after listening, Bhishmoktam, what was spoken by Bhishma Deva, Ata, as also, Achyuta Uktam, what was spoken by the infallible Lord Krishna, Pravritta, being engaged in, Vijnana, perfect knowledge, Viduta, completely washed, Vibrama, all misgivings, Shashasa, ruled over, Gam, the earth, Indra, the king of the heavenly planet, Iva, like Ajitashraya, protected by the invincible Lord, Paridhi Upantam, including the seas, Anuja, the younger brothers, Anuvartita, being followed by them. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Maharaj Yudhishthira, after being enlightened by what was spoken by Bhishma Dev and Lord Sri Krishna, the infallible, engaged himself in matters of perfect knowledge because all his misgivings were eradicated. Thus, he ruled over the earth and seas and was followed by his younger brothers. Okay, before we begin, just a few facts about King Yudhishthira. So he was the eldest among the Pandavas, but he was conceived by Kunti Devi through Yamaraj. So he's the son of Yamaraj. So he's also known as Dharmaputra. And in Gita, there's this verse, I think in 1.16. In 1.15, it's mentioned about how Krishna and Arjuna blow their conch shells. So in 1.16, it is also mentioned regarding Yudhishthira. when he blows his conch shell named Anantavidya. In chapter 9, we saw that during the passing away of Bhishma Dev gave so many instructions to Yudhishthira about how he should rule over the kingdom. So apart from all that, the single most important instruction which he gave was that he actually revealed that their cousin, the cousin of the Pandavas, that is Krishna, he is the supreme personality of Godhead himself. So Bhishma Dev even spoke about how the Pandavas had to undergo so many trials and tribulations, which they did not really deserve, but still throughout the entire journey, they were still saved by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, Bhishma Dev was, he himself was imparting a lot of the important knowledge to Yudhishthira. Actually, Yudhishthira, even he by himself, he is a very righteous person, but still he was always willing to listen to all other greater personalities, especially when it comes to the matters of dharma and how to rule the kingdom righteously. So he was getting all these instructions from Bhishma Dev. And also, even if we look at many of these, in a lot of these Ekadashi stories also, we can see that Krishna himself is imparting all these important knowledge to Yudhishthira and the Pandavas. So, despite being born in the royal family, the Pandavas were always righteous and they were always willing to rule according to righteousness and proper virtues, completely opposite of the Kauravas. So that's why the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna himself, favored the Pandavas over the Kauravas. And after installing Maharaj Yudhishthira as the king, especially after the war, with the Kauravas completely destroyed, so he himself was very satisfied that a rightful ruler is there in Hastinapur. So even from the personal life of Yudhishthira, we can see that he was never willing to compromise on his virtues, regardless whether he was in pleasure or pain. So even before being sent to exile, he was ruling in Indraprastha, and then after the war, he gained control over Hastinapura. But before that, even during when they were all in exile, he was never neither he or the the Pandavas were willing to do things that were against dharma, despite the fact that they have been put into so much difficulties. Like we always hear people say that okay, why bad things always happen to good people. So when people ask such questions, it simply means that they are thinking of being good as something that has to be rewarded. So it simply implies that such people who always ask why bad things always happen to good people, it simply implies that they are trying to be good people by thinking that they will be rewarded for their good behavior. So they have this expectation, but it is not that simple, because we have even seen in the example of so many exalted devotees, like especially like Prahlad Maharaj. He had to undergo so many trials, and he never complained. Okay, why am I being put to so much stress? Uh, even though I'm being so devoted to the Supreme Lord, so he never gave such excuses. So similarly, even Yudhishthira and the Pandavas, they were always in exile. So they never made use of uh, their situation of being in exile as an excuse to indulge in wrongdoings. So even during the war itself, he was Yudhishthira was unwilling to do unrighteous things, especially how during this episode when how they had to kill Dronacharya. So even during that time when the situation demanded, because the they were in the midst of a war which they had to win, and still at that time he was unwilling to do things which seemed to be not righteous. But that doesn't mean that the Pandavas have it's very easy to paint the Pandavas as uh, as though they have done something wrong, but the war itself was not fought according to the rules of dharma, because we also know this episode of how Abhimanyu was killed unfairly and mercilessly by the opposing side. So when the enemies are not willing to follow all these rules, there's no point in fooling ourselves in thinking that we should follow all these rules and let the enemy do whatever he wants. So that's not how we can win any war. So, but still, even in such situations, Yudhishthira was always very reluctant to do whatever that seemed to be not so righteous according to him. But still, by the grace of the Supreme Lord, they won the war, and he was installed as the king. Now the purport. The modern English law of primogeniture, or the law of inheritance by the firstborn, was also prevalent in those days when Maharaj Yudhishthira ruled the earth and seas. So since Yudhishthira was the eldest among the Pandavas, he became the king, and throughout his reign, until the time when the kingdom was handed over to Parikshit Maharaj, so throughout his reign, all the brothers were cooperating with him fully. And even this is something which is completely unimaginable in the present day context, regardless of whether it is with the royal order or even if it's with the common people. Because even in Malaysia's law, there's this law of inheritance, which is part of the Act 39 of 1971. So even when it comes to inheritance of properties, even among common people, we can see that there are so many family feuds, and people are so they are so willing to even kill their own siblings just for the sake of gaining their property. But even in the uh, even in the royal order, when Yudhishthira was ruling, all the brothers were cooperating with him fully until the kingdom was handed over to Parikshit Maharaj. In those days, the king of Hastinapura, now part of New Delhi, was the emperor of the world, including the seas, up to the time of Maharaj Parikshit, the grandson of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Maharaj Yudhishthira's younger brothers were acting as his ministers and commanders of state, and there was full cooperation between the perfectly religious brothers of the king. So it is remarkable to note that all the brothers of Yudhishthira were very cooperative with him, not just when they got their kingdom, but even during the exile. They were willing to undergo all those difficulties with Yudhishthira, regardless of the fact that they were put into that situation simply because of Yudhishthira's doing, because of all those unreasonable gambles that he made. So they were put into such a situation for 13 years, but still they were not complaining, and they were not using that as an excuse to indulge in wrongdoings. They were always very cooperative and supportive of their elder brother. Maharaj Yudhishthira was the ideal king or representative of Lord Sri Krishna to rule over the kingdom of earth, and was comparable to King Indra, the representative ruler of the heavenly planets. The demigods like Indra, Chandra, Surya, Varuna, and Vayu are representative kings of different planets of the universe. And similarly, Maharaj Yudhishthira was also one of them, ruling over the kingdom of the earth. So here we have also seen from our Friday sessions, especially when we saw regarding the upper, middle, and lower planetary systems. So in the upper planetary systems, we have this Swargaloka, and beyond that, Marloka and all the other planets. So in all the planets, there is a predominating deity who is the chief of that planet. And similarly, even in Bhumandal, we saw the descriptions of how the central part is Jambudvipa, surrounded by other Dvipas, and there are other planets beyond the sun and moon, and there are also all these specific predominating deities who act as the chiefs for those planets. So similarly, Yudhishthira was the chief of the entire Earth planet in the middle region. So unlike the modern day context, the entire world was under the rule of a single emperor. So that sort of thing is completely unimaginable nowadays, because it is also part of this degradation which happened with the emergence of Kali Yuga. So earlier, the entire planet was ruled by one king, and all the subjects were cooperative with him. But such things are not imaginable nowadays, because due to the degradation of Kali Yuga, we as Kali Jivas, we are not fit to rule. I guess most Grihasthas would agree that even they are struggling to maintain their own households. So what to speak about maintaining a village or a city or even a country. So such degradation due to the age of Kali has led to this degradation in terms of the administrative context itself, because the this planet is no longer under one person's rule. There are over 190 countries which are always in conflict with each other. Though most of the rulers of the major powers, they are trying to gain control over the entire world, but no matter how hard they try, while they try to gain control over the entire world, they often end up losing their own throne in the process. So it is mentioned that in those days, the king of Hastinapura was the emperor of the whole world, including the seas, up to the time of Maharaj Parikshit. So as we saw in our classes related to Madhya Loka, we saw that the centermost part of the Bhumandal consisted of Jambudvipa, and at the center of Jambudvipa was this Sumeru mountain, and Jambudvipa was surrounded by the saltwater ocean, and then there were the other Dvipas, the Shapta Dvipas. So each of the Dvipas were also surrounded by other types of oceans, up to the last Dvipa, which is Pushkara Dvipa. And then beyond that, we have the Loka mountain, which separates the inhabitable part of Bhumandal from the uninhabitable part of Bhumandal, which is part of the Aloka Varsha. So during that time, the entire Jambudvipa was under the rule of the emperor of Hastinapura. And to be precise, our position in Jambudvipa is in Bharatavarsha and Bharatakanda. So in Jambudvipa, there are 9 Varshas, as we saw in our Madhya Loka classes. So there are 9 Varshas. We are in Bharatavarsha, which is the southernmost part. But above Bharatavarsha is Kim Purusha Varsha, and the northernmost part is Uttara Kuru Varsha. So like that, there are 9 Varshas, all part of Jambudvipa. And within Bharatavarsha itself, there are about 9 subdivisions. And Bharatakanda, our world, is part of the 9th division. So already Bharatavarsha is at the southernmost part of Jambudvipa. So within Bharatavarsha itself, there are 9 subdivisions, and this Bharatakanda is at the southernmost part of Bharatavarsha. So today's world is actually divided even within the Bharatanganta region. But during those days, the rule of the emperor of Hastinapura extended beyond all the Varshas, even beyond Bharatavarsha, throughout Jambudvipa. So the emperors in those ages, they were able to rule to that extent. But due to the degradation brought by the Kali Yuga, our abilities have actually degraded, and therefore there's not even a single ruler for Bharatakanda, which is just a small portion of Bharatavarsha. But during those yugas, the emperor of Hastinapura was able to rule even beyond Bharatavarsha itself, like throughout Jambudvipa. And even in chapter 16 of the first canto, there is a verse which describes regarding the reign of Maharaj Parikshit. It's in the 12th verse of the 16th chapter of canto 1. Bhadrashvam ketumalam cha bharatam chotaran kurun kim purushadini varshani vijitya jagre balim. In this verse, it's mentioned that Maharaj Parikshit then conquered all parts of the earthly planet, Bhadrashva, Ketumala, Bharata, the northern Kuru, Kim Purusha, etc., and exacted tributes from their respective rulers. So in this verse, which we shall see later in chapter 16, it has been described that Maharaj Parikshit was able to extend the kingdom of Hastinapura even beyond Bharatavarsha. So during his reign, his rule extended beyond Bharatavarsha to Kim Purusha Varsha, Ketumala, Bhadrashva, even up to the northernmost part of Jambudvipa, that is the Uttara Kuru Varsha. So Maharaj Parikshit was even we know that he had been blessed by the Supreme Lord even from the episode of his birth itself. We know how he was saved by the Supreme Lord, and he was so fortunate that he could see the Supreme Lord when he was in the womb of his mother Tara. So being such a blessed devotee, he was destined to bring forward the family's glory much further. So he could actually conquer the entire Jambudvipa, not just Bharatavarsha, but beyond Bharatavarsha to all the other Varshas. But in today's context of Kali Yuga, we don't have one single ruler for Bharatakanta also. Even within Bharatakanta, there are so many different countries which are in conflict with each other, fighting for supremacy. And until now, there's been no, the situation is always either bipolar or multipolar. Now it's leading towards a multipolar world. So there's no room for a single ruler in the present day context. And it is also much related to the degradation of Kali Yuga, because as Kali Jivas, we are not fit to rule even within Bharatavarsha, so we can completely forget about the other Varshas. But during those the previous yugas like Dwapara Yuga and Treta Yuga, the rulers were able to rule beyond all the other Varshas. And we also saw a very important point from our Madhyaloka sessions, where it has been mentioned that out of the 9 Varshas in Jambudvipa, only Bharatavarsha is known as the field of fruitive activities, Karma Bhumi. All the other remaining 8 Varshas are known as the Bhauma Swarga regions, meaning that they are regarded as heavenly, they are regarded as earthly heaven planets. So there are 3 types of heavens, Divya Swarga, Bhauma Swarga, and Bila Swarga. Divya Swarga is the heavenly planet in the upper planetary system, in the Urdhva Loka. Even in Madhya Loka, we have heavenly planets known as the Bhauma Swarga regions. So these Bhauma Swarga regions are all the other Varshas except Bharatavarsha. Then Bila Swarga is the region within the lower planetary systems. So like in this in the Vamanadev avatar, we know that Vamanadev, when he expanded to his Trivikrama avatar, when he placed his leg on the head of Bali Maharaj, he was sent to the Sutala region. So even within the subterranean lower planetary systems, there are swargas within those regions. Those swargas are known as Bila swargas. However, despite having such material and heavenly opulence in those swargas, they are different from the upper planets, because more material opulence means that it will take us further away from Krishna consciousness. So the lower planetary systems, the Bila Swargas, are often described as being even more materially opulent compared to the upper planetary systems. However, in the upper planetary systems, above Swargaloka, in Marloka, Maharjana Tapaloka, and Satyaloka, in those regions, though they may not be as materially opulent as the below Swarga regions, those regions are very ideal for the sages to engage in Krishna consciousness. So, despite being not so materially opulent like the below Swarga regions, those upper Swargas are more conducive for them to engage in Krishna consciousness. But in the Bila Swarga regions, it is due to the material opulence. They are like those inhabitants are driven further away from Krishna consciousness. So apart from the Divya Swarga and Bila Swarga, even in this earthly region, in the Madhya Loka also, we have this Bhauma Swargas, and those Bhauma Swargas are the other eight Varshas apart from Bharata Varsha. So during the reign of Maharaj Parikshit, he was able to extend the kingdom far beyond Bharata Varsha. So it is also stated in the purport of that verse in chapter 16 that, in other words, Maharaj Parikshit conquered all the world. He conquered all the continents, adjoining all the seas and oceans in all directions, namely the eastern, western, northern, and southern parts of the world. So he was able to extend the entire kingdom of Hastinapura to completely unimaginable extents, and this was possible in those yugas. Especially even Maharaj Parikshit was there in the beginning of Kali Yuga. So it was possible for them, for such exalted personalities, but it is unimaginable for us as Kali Jivas. Maharaj Yudhishthira was not a typically unenlightened political leader of modern democracy. Maharaj Yudhishthira was instructed by Bhishma Dev and the infallible Lord also, and therefore he had full knowledge of everything in perfection. So since Maharaj Yudhishthira was by himself, he was a very righteous person, and he was blessed to have this association of great personalities like Bhishma Dev and even the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there are other chapters which talk about the conversation between Narada Muni and Maharaj Yudhishthira. So regardless of his position in the royal order, he was always willing to learn from great personalities about how he should rule righteously according to dharma. So that is a very rare quality in the context of today's rulers, because in the past, in those yugas, the rulers like Maharaj Yudhishthira, he was humble enough to understand that he was only ruling the kingdom as a representative of the Supreme Lord. But in the so-called modern day, all the rulers have this mentality of being greater than the Supreme Lord, which is quite similar to the quality which was seen in demons like Hiranyakashipu. So, but ironically, this cannot be attributed to the monarchical setup because it also happens in the so-called democratic world, because ultimately power somehow is given to a certain ruler. And though it is said that we have this constitution and all the other laws which restrict the certain rulers' power, there are also many loopholes which are always exploited by these dictatorial rulers. Just as an example, in India, just for an example, in India, when the BJP won in 2014, especially they got a single party majority after almost 30 years. So it was often said that Modi should be able to completely transform India overnight, but it was not that simple, because it was clearly stated in the constitution that the entire legislature should consist of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So the BJP only won a majority in the Lok Sabha, but not in the Rajya Sabha. So, but in order to pass laws and also to push forward with the reforms, they still needed a majority in the Rajya Sabha. It is something for which they are still struggling. So, having this democratic setup in certain ways, it does ensure that power is not too concentrated in the hands of one individual. But at the same time, people are having too many unrealistic expectations when BJP won in 2014, because just because they won in the Lok Sabha, people were expecting everything to happen overnight because there was no majority in Rajya Sabha until now. So that is one on one hand, it does provide for checks and balances, but at the same time, there are also loopholes in the constitution, like Article 352 of the Constitution of India is what led to the emergency period in 1975. Very often, these emergencies are invoked purely due to political reasons. Even this emergency in 1975, which was proclaimed in India, was purely due to political reasons. But during the proclamation of an emergency, it was said that there are internal threats, external threats, and all that nonsense. But until now, many experts agree that it was purely political. So there are it is like a double-edged sword. Though we have this constitutional democratic setup in this modern day context, some of the loopholes still enable the individual in power to completely misuse the power by exploiting all these loopholes in this present democratic setup. But if the ruler is truly a righteous ruler, like Yudhishthira, even when there was autocracy in the form of monarchy during those days, still he was ruling righteously because he was always having this mindset of being a servant of the Supreme Lord. He always regarded himself as a representative of the Supreme Lord, and he was not trying to be someone greater than the Supreme Lord himself. The modern elected executive head of state is just like a puppet because he has no kingly power. Even if he is enlightened like Maharaj Yudhishthira, he cannot do anything out of his own good due to his constitutional position. Therefore, there are so many states over the earth quarreling because of ideological differences or other selfish motives. If we look at all these countries in the world, there are countries which have their constitution, and there are many other countries which don't even have a constitution. And even when we compare the countries which have a constitution, there are countries which have a preamble of their constitution, and there are many other countries which don't have a preamble. Even when we look at the countries which have a preamble, even that preamble, there are many flavors of the preamble. Some of the preambles denote about individual freedom, some denote about religious principles, and so on. So even the foundations of all these countries have been laid based on completely opposing ideologies, and because of that, all the countries are aiming for their own supremacy on the world stage. But ultimately, that's what will always be the biggest bane in achieving world peace. So, in other words, the United Nations will always remain a big joke that it already is. Because even in the United Nations, we have these so-called permanent members of the Security Council who have this nonsensical veto power, and there are non-permanent members. There are other normal countries with just voting rights, but regardless of all those voting rights, the superior countries which have the veto power, they can simply bulldoze anything as they wish. So where is this idea of United Nations in fact? So that is the biggest joke in the modern day context. But a king like Maharaj Yudhishthira had no ideology of his own. He had but to follow the instructions of the infallible Lord and the Lord's representative and the authorized agent Bhishma Dev. It is instructed in the Shastras that one should follow the great authority and the infallible Lord without any personal motive and manufactured ideology. Therefore, it was possible for Maharaj Yudhishthira to rule the whole world, including the seas, because the principles were infallible and universally applicable to everyone. So since the entire universe, I mean, not just this universe, we know that through the Purusha Avatar concepts, there are many other innumerable universes, but even when we talk about the context of our universe, all the universes are under the control of the Supreme Lord. So as long as the righteous ruler is humble enough to rule with the mindset of being a servant of the Supreme Lord, and if he pleases the Supreme Lord, then his rule will be universally applicable to all. So that's why even during the time of Maharaj Parikshit, he could rule beyond Bharatavarsha itself to cover the entire Jambudvipa. So for now, in Kali Yuga, with our so-called modern science and technology, we cannot even explore what is there in Bharatakanda. We cannot even think about exploring the many other unknown regions within Bharatavarsha. But during those yugas, the ruler was able to go beyond Bharatavarsha to cover the entire Jambudvipa. So that is the degradation due to Kali Yuga, and still we are so proud of ourselves with all these so-called technologies that we have invented. Therefore, it was possible for Maharaj Yudhishthira to rule the whole world, including the seas, because the principles were infallible and universally applicable to everyone. The conception of one world state can only be fulfilled if we can follow the infallible authority. So only when the infallible authority is made as the central, the focal point of governing the entire world, only then it will be possible. But if we have a joke like the United Nations with only a certain few countries having this veto power, and all of them competing against each other for their own supremacy, so in such a case, there can be no United Nations in reality. An imperfect human being cannot create an ideology acceptable to everyone. Only the perfect and the infallible can create a program which is applicable at every place and can be followed by all in the world. So as long as any righteous ruler emerges, and if he follows the principles laid out by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then that ruler will be able to lead the entire world. However, we know that now we are in the age of degradation, so we'll just have to wait for Kalki Avatar to clean up all the mess. It is the person who rules and not the impersonal government. If the person is perfect, the government is perfect. If the person is a fool, the government is a fool's paradise. That is the law of nature. So in the modern context, where we have this democratic setup, we are the ones who should blame ourselves, because we are the ones who vote for various reasons, and therefore we will get what we deserve. So in those yugas, only righteous rulers were able to rule, and even when evil forces like the Kauravas were at the helm, the Supreme Lord himself descended to restore Dharma and install a righteous king like Maharaj Yudhishthira. But now with this so-called democratic setup, we have created all the mess, and therefore we are responsible for whatever that happens. Because through this so-called democratic setup, we ourselves are allowing those who are worse than Shudras and Chandalas to rule. And because of due to our own selfish motives, we always tend to be fooled by all the sugar-coated promises. I mean, I'm not really talking about the Malaysian context, but it is very visible in what happened in Tamil Nadu in 2021. So all sorts of nonsensical promises were made. And despite knowing the true colors of DMK, people still voted for them, and now they are reaping what they sowed. So that is the beauty of this so-called democracy. There are so many stories of imperfect kings or executive heads. Therefore, the executive head must be a trained person like Maharaj Yudhishthira, and he must have the full autocratic power to rule over the world. The conception of a world state can take shape only under the regime of a perfect king like Maharaj Yudhishthira. The world was happy in those days because there were kings like Maharaj Yudhishthira to rule over the world. So again, if we look at certain very unique attributes of Maharaj Yudhishthira, he was like, as mentioned earlier, even during the war, he was not willing to indulge in any wrongdoings. And even after the war, he was willing to take care of Dhritarashtra and his wife, because none of their sons, all the 100 sons had been slain. So he was, Yudhishthira was willing to take care of Dhritarashtra, despite the fact that even from the first verse of Gita, we know that Dhritarashtra spoke the first verse of Gita saying, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samaveda Yutsava Amaka Pandavasteva Kim Makuruta Sanjaya. From the first verse of the Gita itself, we know that Dhritarashtra was treating the Pandavas as others. He was discriminating between his own sons and the Pandavas, but Yudhishthira was very caring towards Dhritarashtra. And even when Dhritarashtra was chastised by Vidura to quit the palace, because Vidura wanted both Dhritarashtra and Gandhari to quit this material opulence and engage in devotional service, at least during their advanced age. So after Dhritarashtra left the palace, even at that time, Yudhishthira was very anxious when he went all over searching for them. So such qualities are very rare nowadays. And he was also feeling very guilty, especially after the war, because in the Mahabharata war, about 640 million deaths occurred. So he was also feeling very guilty about so many lives being lost just for his sake to be enthroned. But it was never about him being installed as the king. It was all about fulfilling the Supreme Lord's wish. And also there's a description regarding this conversation between Yama and Yudhishthira. When Yamaraj inquired Yudhishthira, what is the most wonderful thing within this world? Yudhishthira replied, Ahani Bhutani Gachantita Yamalayam Sheshas Tavaram Ichanti Kim Maschariam Ataparam. Hundreds and thousands of living entities meet death at every moment, but a foolish living being nonetheless thinks himself deathless and does not prepare for death. This is the most wonderful thing in this world. Everyone has to die because everyone is fully under the control of material nature, yet everyone thinks that he is independent. that whatever he likes, he can do, that he will never meet death, but live forever, and so on. So-called scientists are making various plans by which living entities in the future can live forever, but while they are thus pursuing such scientific knowledge, Yamaraj, in due course of time, will take them away from their business of so-called research. And something quite similar to what has been mentioned here. Most of the so-called atheists and rationalists, they often make fun of devotees, saying that okay, since if you think that God is so powerful, why do you go to hospitals when you have any disease? Why don't you just go to the temple? So they often tend to mock believers and devotees by saying that. However, those fools don't realize that even those doctors are not immortal. I mean, no offense to doctors. Of course, theirs is indeed a very noble profession, but even the doctors would agree that even they themselves are not immortal, regardless of the fact that they are saving so many lives. Even during the pandemic, so many doctors and nurses also lost their lives. So always it is the will of the Supreme Lord which prevails. So that's what these foolish rascals fail to understand. And as long as they pretend to deny the existence of the Supreme Lord, they'll remain fools, and it's entirely up to them. Krishna never interferes in their minor independence. So it can be clearly seen from the life of Yudhishthira that he was such an exalted personality, because despite being born in the royal family, he was always very righteous, and he maintained so many virtues since childhood himself, since his childhood itself, and he was never willing to compromise on his virtues. And even when he was put into so many difficulties, like during the period of exile, even at that time, he never looked for excuses. He didn't ask why bad things always happen to good people. So he was not trying to make excuses to indulge in wrongdoings. So he never compromised on the path of dharma, even during the war, and even after the war, he was he was like feeling very guilty about so many lives being lost just for the sake of enthroning him. But with the blessings and the mercy of the Supreme Lord and a Mahajan like Bhishma Dev, he was able to understand that it was his duty to rule as a representative of the Supreme Lord. And therefore, he was able to rule and hand over the kingdom to Maharaj Parikshit, who brought the glory of the family to even greater heights. So I just want to share another story, which is quite related to the personality of Maharaj Yudhishthira, but this is not part of the Mahabharata. Actually, this video is available on YouTube. It's titled "The Timeless Wisdom," the introduction by His Grace Amarendra Prabhu. So I'll just try to explain this story very briefly. So once upon a time, there was a very perfect king. He was like very materially opulent, very powerful. So in his kingdom, there was a sage who was always trying to approach this king to preach to him about all the spiritual teachings. But this king, being a very he was a very materially opulent person, and he was not willing to listen to all these spiritual teachings. So he would always chase away this sage. And at one point, the sage told him that, okay, now you should go and look for the most foolish person in your kingdom and make him your chief minister. If you can find that person and make him your chief minister, then after that, I will never come back to you to preach about all these spiritual matters. So the king was quite elated because he got this chance to get rid of this sage. So the king sent all his royal guards to search for the most foolish person in the kingdom, and then they found this. There was this person who was sitting on the branch of a tree, and he was cutting that branch with an axe. So he was sitting at the corner, and he was cutting that very branch on which he was sitting. So all these guards, they were shouting to him, and they say that, are you crazy? You are going to fall down the moment you cut the branch. You better stop it. But he was not willing to listen. So that person kept cutting the branch, and when he fell down, he asked the guards whether, are you all astrologers? How did you predict that I'm going to fall down? So these guards, they thought that, okay, we have found the most foolish person in the kingdom. So they brought him to the king, and then the king said that the king told the sage that, okay, I found this person. I'll make him my chief minister. So from now onwards, you should not come to me with all your spiritual preaching. So from that day, that foolish person was made the chief minister of this king, and the sage would not trouble this king anymore with his spiritual teachings. So one day, when during his advanced age, so the king was lying on his deathbed, and this foolish chief minister came to see him, and he said, very nice to see you taking rest. So the king was actually in pain on his deathbed, and this foolish person was saying that, wow, it's so nice to see you taking such a good rest. So the king said that, no, I'm going to go on a long journey, because the king could see that he's going to leave his body very soon. So he told this foolish chief minister that he's going to leave he's going on a long journey. But that foolish person could not understand. So he simply asked, okay, so are you going to take us with you? Then the king said, no, I'll be going alone. Then the chief minister asked, oh, so you're actually going to take your wives and children with you, right? That's why you're not going to take us with you. Then the king said, no, I'll have to be alone in this journey. No one will be following me. Then the chief minister continued asking, okay, then have you taken enough food stuff, just in case you might feel hungry during the journey? Then at that point, the king really got irritated, and he said, oh, you fool, I cannot be taking anything with me during this journey, because I'm going to face my death very soon. Then still the foolish person kept asking, okay, then have you at least taken all your material wealth, all your gold coins, and all your whatever opulences that you have accumulated all your life? Then the king said, no, I won't be able to take anything with me. I'll just be going alone empty-handed. So at that point, the chief minister, he was reminding the king about something which happened the day when he was appointed as chief minister by this king. On that day, the king told this person, this foolish person, that actually he was putting this crown for this chief minister. So at that time, the king said, the day when you find a person who is more foolish than you, then you should hand over this crown to him. So because the requirement of the sage was that the most foolish person in the kingdom should be made the chief minister. So the king laid out this condition to that foolish person. And when the king was on his deathbed, this chief minister reminded him about that incident. And then this chief minister, he took off his crown and he put it on the king's head. And then he said that now I've actually found a bigger fool than myself. So this you deserve this crown. So the king was visibly very agitated, and he said that no, you are the biggest fool. I'm not a fool like you. For that, this chief minister replied, saying that you yourself know that you cannot bring your material wealth and your opulences after your death, but still you have wasted your entire life trying to chase all these, trying to go after all these material things which you cannot take with you. So that foolish chief minister, he chastised this king like that. So at that time, this king actually felt that okay, this person cannot really be a foolish person who he appears to be. So he started to inquire, who are you? That time, the chief minister told the king that I'm actually the disciple of that sage who always used to approach you to impart all his spiritual teachings. So since you are reluctant to listen to his preachings, he is the one who told me to make you realize about how this material life is impermanent. And finally, this seemingly foolish chief minister, he was able to knock some sense into the king's head, though it was too late. But still, from this story, we can clearly see how any person, whether he's a king, prince, or pauper, all of us, we have to leave our material body and everything that is material when we are going to leave this body. So whether it's a king or a beggar, the rules are the same. So for a personality like Maharaj Yudhishthira, he was never blinded by this mindset of being such a great king. He was never blinded by all the material opulence that which he got, but he was always righteous, and he always served his subjects as a representative of the Supreme Lord. And that's why the Supreme Lord himself descended to the world to wipe out the evil Kauravas, and he installed Maharaj Yudhishthira as the rightful ruler of Hastinapura. And the same virtues were passed on to the future generations, like what we can see from Maharaj Parikshit himself. So that's what is described in this verse. So that's all for today's session. So any questions or comments? Hare Krishna.
Hi, Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for
Yes.
a nice,
Okay.
good class. Thank you, Prabhu.
Oh, okay, thank you. So okay, no questions, then